Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Coming Back from the Coronavirus as a Stronger Organization. I'm Paul Michelman, Editor-in-Chief of MIT Sloan Management Review, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's program is sponsored by Skillsoft. Our speaker today is George Westerman. George is a senior lecturer at the MIT Sloan School of Management and principal research scientist for workforce learning at MIT's Jameel World Education Lab. George, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Delighted to be here, and thanks for everybody who has come to the event. I'm looking forward to sharing these thoughts with you, and hopefully you'll find them useful as you try to come back stronger from the coronavirus. So as Paul said, I work here at the Sloan School of Management, and I've been here for almost 20 years now. I've been in the last few years working in workforce learning at JWell. What we're trying to do there is using these digital tools and using the kind of AI and analytics we have available, how can we get the right skills to the right people the right way at scale? Now's a chance to reinvent that. And so I'm really focusing a lot of my time on that right now. So I've been doing work on digital transformation for about 10 years now. We have one of the first great books on the topic. We have some great work that we've done with Sloan Management Review on there. And until February, that was the conversation that was happening in most organizations. Technology is the endless agitator of the business world. And all the conversations seem to be about how can we make sense of the technology? How can we use technology to transform where we're going? And so what we learned there, though, is Moore's Law is changing technology really quickly. But there's another law, I call it George's Law. The SMR people wouldn't let me call it that. We call it the first law of digital innovation. And that's that technology changes quickly, but organizations change much more slowly. And that gets lost in the technology conversation because the technology doesn't provide you value. The value comes from changing your organization. Or if we want to say it this way, digital is not the main problem, transformation is. And that also meant that in that case, it's not really a technology challenge, it's a leadership challenge to make these things happen. Now, up till February, we had a lot of really interesting things to say on that. And then along came this. And I remember this very clearly because we had done this wonderful event, March 4th, had 100 people into MIT to talk about human skills and how you measure them and how you use them and what do you want to do with them. It was a phenomenal event. And on May 6th, we were told, don't come to campus anymore, that everybody then went home. And we have not been back to campus until now. And that was troublesome. It's still a lot of scary stuff going on, but we as organizations have figured out how to deal with this in a remote way. In fact, if I were to think about it, what we were talking about trying to do in digital transformation happened pretty darn quickly as soon as the virus came along. And so this, I'd love to take credit for this. I have no idea who did it, but I'm happy to share it. And if you know who did it, let me know. So much of this COVID made us in 2 months change faster than we had in 5 years normally. And what happened is things that were impossible became possible. Things that felt like they wouldn't work suddenly did work. But here's the biggest challenge we've got. As MIT starts to come back to school and all these others comes back to school, as companies start to think about how to bring workers back or how to continue work now in a steady state with the workers remotely, the challenge is this. When COVID came on, we changed really quickly, but did we change well? And I would argue that in most companies, the change happened and we're still catching up to where that change led us and where we need to go from there. But even as that's happening, some companies are moving quickly. Some companies are able to move ahead and all of us are trying to move forward. And as we think about it, are we ready for the change to come? What we really need now is not the technical part. We know how to do remote work. We know how to combine the remote and the physical work when that's happening. There's a lot of detail to work out, but that's happening. But what we need at this point is resilience. We need agility. We need energy to drive forward because nobody knows what the future looks like. The only thing we know is there will be more uncertainty, more change in the coming months as we all adjust to figuring out what the COVID and the post-COVID world starts to look like. Here's the thing though, if you're looking at that, resilience, agility, energy, those are not technical things. And just like the first law of digital innovation said, technology moves quickly, organizations change slowly, it's this same thing here. These are people challenges, they're not technical ones. The answer to this is not going to be to put more tools in place, to invest more in infrastructure. Yeah, you probably have to do that. But the real place to invest now to be ready for the future is leadership. How can we help to build the resilience, the agility, the energy in the people? How can we get the people moving and empowered to make change now and to continue to adapt and grow and improve the organization over time? So what I want to do with the rest of this time is share 3 major research studies that my teams and I have done over the last couple of years that are directly relevant to this idea of managing the people side of COVID. And so if I can talk about it, then there are really 4 ways to think about how to get this people element going. The idea is you've made some changes. Now, how do you make the organization ready to help propel you forward and adapt and grow and innovate in this new world? So how can we come back stronger? How can we manage the people side of COVID? I just want to lay out 4 things to share with you. First is change the why. Why are we in business? Why should the people come to work for us? Why are we working this hard? Number 2, change the culture to be more agile and more resilient. Then change the way we learn so people can get the skills they need and have the capabilities to continue to change over time. And last is to change what we pay attention to, because, and we'll get to that, sometimes we're paying attention to the wrong things and we need to build up on more for that. So what I want to do is go through each of these now in the next half hour or so, just quickly touch on these 3 major research studies, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So starting with changing the why, there's not a research study on this. This is something we've known for a while, but we forget about it sometime. What is the sense of mission that we have in this organization? Why should people come to work here and not anywhere else? The thing that's happening is, certainly in this remote world, we had to learn how to work remotely, but now that we can work remotely, and we were all doing that originally, many organizations had remote workers, we had global workforces we were tying together, but it's just become the norm now. The question is, if I don't need to work at the office, then why do I need to work anywhere near home? And if I don't need to work anywhere near home, and if I've got good skills, why not work for a place I want to be, not just a place that's near me that will pay me well? And that's this sense of mission that we want to build up. Why are we in business? Now, this is not your typical mission statement. Those mission statements it's hard to know where they come from, but they're usually pretty darn bad. This is more the sense of mission that you want to think about when you think about missionaries or your local nonprofit that's trying to help the poor, or when you think about what the UN and the World Health Organization are doing, right? They're doing this because they believe in what they're doing. They're doing it because they feel that they can have important impact on people's lives. What can you do as an organization to try to build up that kind of a mission, right? So that can be tricky, right? And some of the missions that are kind of interesting, right? Disney wants to give entertaining and inspiring people through unparalleled storytelling. And if you know Disney, that it kind of fits really well, and people join because of that idea. Nike bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete. That's a mission, right? And certainly we know what the startups do. What can you do about building a mission? And if you're not at the point where you can change the mission of the company or tell the stories of the mission of the company, what can you do to help your group have a mission to make the company better? So number 1 is mission. Why are we in business? Why should somebody work for you rather than somebody else? What will inspire them to come to work beyond just the pay side of things? So that's the mission piece, and it's really important, although we sometimes forget about it. Now I want to move into the 3 studies and share some other things you can do if you can get this compelling mission going, or even as you start trying to develop this compelling mission, what can you do to put that resilience, the agility, the energy into things? The mission will help with the energy, and then being able to make progress and constantly move forward will drive that energy even farther. So the first is change your culture. And this is research that we published in Sloan Management Review last June, about a year ago. And it was really talking about how can you get a culture that's close enough to the digital leaders that we know of to really keep up. And it's even more compelling now as we go through. So if we talk about George's Law, right? Technology changes quickly, organizations change much more slowly. But here's the thing, organizational cultures, they change even more slowly than that. In fact, you hear all the time, culture eats strategy for lunch. You hear all the time, well, I tried to make that change, but the culture wouldn't let me. You hear things like organizational antibodies getting in the way. That's culture, right? When you're trying to do something that's against the culture, it can slow you down. But that doesn't mean you stop. That means you either find a way to align it with the culture or you find a way to change the culture to get where you want to go. Now, I heard over and over again back in this research, we'd hear, I wish I had the culture of Google. I wish I had the culture of Amazon. I wish I had the culture of one of those new startups we hear. But you know, if you are a Swedish appliance manufacturer or you're a Midwest steel manufacturer or something like that, you may not be able to do that. You can't hire people that way. You can't fire them that way. You can't necessarily do some of the rules that they have in there. How can you get close? The thing is, those cultures were not necessarily something that you really wanted to have all the way there anyway. If we think, I want to share something that's oh, sorry. Here's my favorite definition of culture, by the way. There are lots of good academic definitions, but this really gets it well. When the boss leaves the room, how well do people work? How do they work together? Are they innovating or are they just kind of slacking off, right? That's the culture. That's where we want to build. We want to get the organization ready to move and to change and to grow without the boss constantly saying, hey, let's do that. So, for example, here's a really very good digital company in the Boston area called HubSpot. And the question is, do you really want the culture that they had? When they first started out, this is the culture that they published. They are maniacal about the mission and metrics. They're always working to solve for the customer. The company and profits are less important than solving for the customer. Radically and uncomfortably transparent, right? Autonomy to be awesome. Picky about our peers and about individual mastery, constantly questioning the status quo. Those all sound very good, and they sound exactly like the kind of thing you'd want to have if you are a digital startup. But the thing that happened with HubSpot as they grew, as they started to think about going public, as they got bigger and they had a different mix of people involved, they started to change this. And so here's the set that they had more recently, and it's changed again. We commit maniacally to mission and metrics, right? It's not maniacal, it's committing maniacally. Number two, they look to the long term and solve for the customer. You see how these things are changing, right? They aren't radically uncomfortably transparent. They share openly and they're remarkably transparent. So you see what's happening, right? The organization has taken some of the edges off and they've started to realize that there's more to life than just work. And maybe breaking all the rules is not the best thing to do. You want to challenge the rules, but not break them. And this is what we find over and over again, that the biggest parts of those digital cultures are a little too far to go. At Netflix, they keep you on board as long as you're a star. They say we're a sports team, not a family. The minute you're not a star, we'll get rid of you and hire a star. That's how they used to talk about their culture there. Not the kind of thing you want to do in most companies. So I spent a lot of time on this to say you can be digital enough and get there. And this is what this study is about here. We define digital-ready culture as a shared and mutually reinforcing set of values and practices that enable innovation execution in a digital world. This is not digital companies. These are digital enough cultures, digital-ready cultures in traditional companies. And we see it built on 4 values and a set of practices that you can implement in stages. The values, number 1, impact. I talked about mission. Certainly the startups are all about changing the world, really, really making big impact on the world. And the same thing, we'll come back to that mission thing I said earlier. How are you in the business of making the world better and not just making money? Number 2, speed. 3, autonomy. People have high levels of discretion rather than formal structure and sign-off processes. Typically you hear you can act within swim lanes, or you can act within guide rails. And within there, you're fine. Then you might need to talk to somebody if you get beyond those guide rails. And then the last is openness. Engage with whoever needs to be engaged. It doesn't matter whether they're in your organization. It doesn't matter whether they're even in your company. We hear often that talent is more important than title in this thing. Now, none of these go against any rules of how organizations should work. All of them can make you be more digital ready and more digital ready, more agile, better at meeting the market and meeting what your company needs to do. But those values are fine. The problem with the values is they're just words, and the values need to be linked into practice. So what do we think about the practices here? Well, here are a set of practices we identified in the research for how you get this work done. They move from the left-hand side, experimenting rapidly, self-organizing, driving decisions with data, things that the digital companies do well that the typical traditional company, at least in our surveys, comparing digital and traditional companies, the traditional companies didn't do nearly as well on there. Then we moved in the middle, obsessing about customers, focusing on results. Digital and traditional companies felt they do these about the same, but they do them very differently, and I'll get back to that. Integrity, stability, these are things you hear when the digital companies get in trouble. They have forgotten about these practices. And as they grow up, they start to be more careful about these practices. The good thing is our research shows that if you pay attention to these, it doesn't have to hurt your innovativeness at all. And last is something that tends to happen in traditional companies and not in the digital ones at all, using rules. Having a rules orientation and often using rules to stop progress. That tends to happen more in the traditionals, and it's just a bad idea. This is the one thing we found that was negatively associated with performance in the surveys that we ran. So how do you get these things built? Well, let me just put them on in stages here. Number one, if you want to get this more digital ready, if you want to get digital enough to really make progress, and as I mean by that, not just digital progress, but also this resilience and this agility that we're trying to build up in a coronavirus era. Number one is work on building these things that the digital companies have. Rapid experimentation, self-organizing, focusing on the data to see whether we're making progress or not. These are things that we know the digital companies do. The good thing is these are things that every traditional company can do now. If you're a large company, your IT organization already knows what Agile is, whether they're doing it or not. If you're not, there are many people that could come in and help you figure out how to be more agile. What I will say, though, is that the point about being more agile, these practices are very doable. We know how to do them. There are coaches that can help you, but don't just leave it in the IT organization. And if your IT organization is doing it, work with them. Don't have them try to do it on their own. Because the change that happens, remember earlier I said that it's not a technology problem, it's a transformation problem. The change that's going to happen is on the business side, not just with technology. So number one, build up these agile self-experimentation, self-organizing practices and make them part of the way you work. Number two, preserve the integrity and stability. You've worked hard to get there. Make sure that you keep those because that's important for your reputation, but also just important for the kinds of improvements you're trying to make and the improvements the way that you're trying to treat your workers. Number three, you think you're customer responsive. You think that you're moving to the results, but you're not doing it the way the digital people did. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you ask your customers what they want, you're often going to get an incremental improvement on what they already have. The great companies lead their customers to help the customers understand what they need. And so you're constantly trying experiments to see what the customers want. There's an old story from Henry Ford. I don't know whether it's true or not, but Henry Ford said, if I listened to my customers, all I would have was a faster horse. And that's not what they needed. They needed a whole different mode of transportation. Same thing happened with the iPhone and those kinds of things that have come out of Apple regularly. The other is results orientation. If you're looking at your quarterly numbers, you're basically looking backwards all the time. Where you want to be doing is managing by today's results, the week's results, not the quarter's results. Because then as you make a change, you do an experiment, you see quickly whether something has happened or not. So we need to reorient what it means to be customer responsive, customer obsessed. We need to reorient what it means to be driving by the results. And last, if rules are getting in the way, stop it. We all know, and we've all been guilty of using rules to try to stop something we didn't want to happen, but we need to change that way. The organization is not about rules. The rules should help us make better progress, not get in the way of making progress at all. So these are 4 steps. We know how to do these. We just have to do them. And this will make you digital enough. It'll make you agile and responsive enough to really thrive without having to go all the way to where the digital companies are in terms of paying and hiring and managing, and also making some of the mistakes that they've made over time. So that's the culture piece. We talked about you want to have help engage people in a mission that they believe in. And then the good thing is, as you got that mission is going to want to drive people to change, to do better in an organization. And so we need to unleash the organization's culture to allow people to make great things happen. And I said this is digital company, this is traditional companies, not digital. DBS Bank was the worst of the top banks in Singapore for customer experience. The story was that DBS stood for damn bloody slow. Now that's not exactly the brand reputation you want to have in an organization. So they decided to change it, and they knew they'd change it not through some marketing effort, but by engaging the whole culture and making it happen. So they talked about becoming a 22,000 person startup, but they started with a mission. Let's make banking joyful. Let's try to figure out how to make it the best experience our customers can have, because if it's the best experience that they can have, we'll be a better company and more profitable over time. So they engaged the workers in that. They did all kinds of opportunities for people to contribute ideas and even be part of making change happen. And they did some learning things, which I'll talk about in a minute, to make that happen. They went from worst to first in the customer experience for the company. They launched a new digital effort in India that could work for lower income people and still be profitable. And the whole company is just different in the course of about 4 years than it ever was before. We've certainly seen interesting stuff with ING, with Haier in China, big traditional appliance company working into micro units that can work in a much more agile way and connect across as they need to create businesses. And even at CarMax, you don't think about selling cars as being the most innovative, digital, agile thing. But at CarMax, Shaheem Mohammed, who won our contest this year as the best CIO for Sloan, he in 5 years worked with making the culture more agile, more ready, starting in IT and then moving up through the rest of the business. And in 5 years, they went from $14 to $20 billion in sales. They grew their EPS by 70% over the course of 5 years. And it's just a different company, not the typical thing you'd think of a car retailing company going forward. So this is what I'm talking about. You don't need to be digital. You just need to be digital enough, and you can do it. So we got the mission, and in that mission, we're going to then unleash the culture so the culture can help people feel they're having that impact and see where they're going. Where do we want to go from there? Well, as this culture happens, we then want to help the people be more ready to play their role. And that's changing the way that you learn. So this is another study that we just published this January. And it's about changing the way that we train people in organizations. So what we've seen in talking to many companies around the world is that there are two models of how we do learning and development. Now, if you're like me, having grown up in organizations for a while, learning and development was not known as the most strategic, not known as the most customer responsive, not known as the most dynamic organization in your organization. It had a real trainer mentality. The idea being, hang up a slate of courses. If you feel like taking those courses, okay, wait 4 months, that course will be available for you. And if you need a new course, well, give me a year, I'll see what I can do for it. Not the greatest reputation, not the most responsive people in an organization. And as a result, they've been under budget pressure and under questions about their value for increasingly over the last few years. What we've seen is emerging is a new model called the Transformer Chief Learning Officer. This is not, let's take orders and hang up a lot of courses. This is, hey, the organization needs to go somewhere. I'm going to sign up and take personal responsibility to help the organization get there. That's personal responsibility, personal risk, personal stress, but we are going to help the organization be ready. We're not just going to take orders and kind of hang back and let somebody else take all the risk. The idea here is that the transformers are playing a critical role in helping the organization be ready, helping develop those skills we need for that new culture, helping develop the capacity to change in ways that they've never done before. And in fact, we see that this model learning development is better for organizations and better for the workers. And the reason for that is that they're changing 3 different ways. Number one, they're changing the goals. They're going from developing skills to developing the right mindsets and capabilities. So not only we can perform our job now, but also we can adapt much more smoothly in the future. So it's not, hey, what skills do you need? Here we go. It's more, let's get to the mindset, let's get the capability to change so you can do this and you can grow and you can be more comfortable helping the organization to grow. Number two, the methods, much more personalized, atomized, digitized than they ever were before, much more learner-centered than they ever were before. And that also means the department has to change, much leaner, more agile, more strategic than it ever was before. These words, lean, agile, strategic, were not words I had ever heard about learning and development when I was working in my career and working with companies. This new model is emerging very well now, and it's going to grow over time. Now, I talk about the Transformer CLO, but this is really something that applies to everybody in the organization, because everybody in the organization needs to learn. And if you're a leader, you need your organization to learn. And so if your CLO doesn't look like this, then maybe now's the time to work with the CLO or to help people make that change. We have a poll. So why don't we pull up this poll and just do a quick one. I'm going to tell you more about how to make these changes happen. But can we pull up the poll and look at where people stand on this dichotomy? So it's just a very quick poll. What do you think? When you think about learning and development in your organization, are you thinking more trainer, hanging up a bunch of courses and hoping people take them and taking orders, or the Transformer where they're taking an active role in making this happen? So now I'm just waiting to see what the answers say. We have an awful lot of people on the call, so let's see how the things work. Can we see the results? Okay, I am not seeing the results here.
Hi, George. It's Paul. I'm going to pop in quickly because I can see the results.
Okay, great. Yeah, what are they?
54% trainer, 46% transformer.
That's really interesting. 54-46, because that's better than I would expect. We saw around 20-25% of the people that we interviewed for the study were in that transformer mode. Now, the fact that people were willing to be interviewed probably meant they were farther along than they wanted to go. So the idea that half of you already feel like you're in that mode is really good news. The other half, the story is get there, because if you don't have it, you need it. And if you're a leader who isn't that, you need to become that one pretty quickly. So let me just share what it means to become that way, and what you can, as a leader or as a employee in a company, can expect when learning and development is being done right. So I talked about these three changes. Let's go through them one at a time. Number one is transforming the learning goals. It's about changing leadership development. So it's not just about leadership, but it's about how to drive change, how to get the rapid experimentation, how to change the way we collaborate in ways we never did before, how to grow your people better. Sometimes leadership development's been doing that. Many times it was a different kind of thing. Next is democratizing the learning. You know, we heard over and over again that our top people get great learning and other people just get whatever's left, and that needs to be improved. Also democratizing, meaning the learning's often being delivered by people in a company, not by trainers. It's being delivered by subject matter experts, and that's better for everybody. And the last is the skills, the capabilities, curiosity, growth mindset. So Julie Durbin at Cargill said, if we're going to grow, we have to change. And if we're going to change, we have to learn. That's really a critical way to talk about it. And really also importantly, with what Amelie Villeneuve had said at UBS, we don't know what the next couple of years are looking at. Now, this was back last fall, a year ago, when we did this interview. Think about, you know, how we think about now. We have no idea what the world's going to look like in the next few months. We don't want to focus on building little skills for people. We want to be able to build the capabilities so people can get the skills they need and they can grow and adapt over time. So DBS Bank, for example, when they were doing things, they talked about, well, everybody needs to know enough about digital so that we can, as we make these changes, people will understand. That didn't mean they need to be digital experts, but they tried to get everybody up to a common language here. We also see an awful lot more about growth mindset and about having people get into situations where they have to think beyond what they're able to do so they can stretch themselves a little bit more. It's about the capability to change. It's about this basic understanding, not just about the particular skills you need for your job. So number two in here, transforming experience, well, digitized, atomized, personalized, in the flow. We're not going to classrooms as much as what we used to. We are going to digital classrooms, but those digital classrooms, if it's just a matter of watching some professor talk on tape for, a day, not a great model. Even at Sloan, when we do our executive education now, there are quick hits of professor talking and then a lot more talking among each other. In our asynchronous courses, a little bit of video, a lot of we working on ourselves and working together to really learn how to do this. And so we're seeing changes that happen like this. A lot of peer teaching, letting the experts teach it. They might not be the best teachers, but they know the topic really well, and we can help them be good teachers. Daily questions. Many leaders now, many companies are now sending a daily question to a leader or to an innovator to just say, are you doing this? Have you thought about this? And the idea is by asking the question, you help people internalize what they should be doing, right? Pin boards. If you want to know the best thing you got on machine learning, pin it up here. The best thing you know on building in resilience in a company, put it up here. And these pin boards become then sources of knowledge for the organization. One place we had at Accenture, this is becoming a critical element of how they learn. And there are hundreds of these pin boards now with really good material. Those pin boards also feed the development of classes. Global classrooms, so people with different cultures and different parts of the world can get to know each other. You can think more globally. A lot of simulations and games, putting you immersed in a situation where you actually have to think through the problem. A very different way to learn, and we've done this with human skills and other places. Very different way, a more difficult way to set up the course, but what an amazing way to help people learn and to retain what they've learned. One of the other real challenges here is you should expect that everything you do involves instruction, introspection, and immersion, the 3 I's. And the reason for that is if 80% of what you learn, you'll forget quickly. If you get the chance to do introspection on it, it will stay in your head even more. And if you get immersion, you find out what you know and what you don't know very quickly. So what's an example of that? In the call centers at Fidelity Investments, you learn in the classroom, you talk with other call center agents, and in the afternoon, you get on the switchboard and they route calls with that new capability to you. So that afternoon, you get to try out what you've learned and learn what you don't. So when you come back the next morning, you're ready to learn some more stuff. That's linking it all together. At Cargill, what they do, in the minute, you can get some micro learning on a topic. You then apply it at work, and then you write up a little thing that you can share with your peers on whether it worked, and your peers can give you feedback. And so they reverse these I's a little bit. But the idea is that by putting it together in work, you learn, and then you can share with others so they learn. So if your learning process is not this, if your learning process is not this, if it's not this, if it doesn't involve the 3 I's, it's time to change that process. And if you are L&D, you can change it. If you're not L&D, you can demand it and get that. Last is transform the L&D unit on here. The organization's smaller, faster, more agile. There are new roles coming out here, experienced designers, curators. There are communications roles that weren't there. And also, it's much more created from creation to curation and co-creation, much more peer learning, much more learning in multiple sources and more formats. So we are doing an event on this topic. We're getting together a lot of people on September 15th in a virtual way to think through these ideas. So if you're interested, please join us here. You can go to that site there, bit.ly trainer to transformer, and see what we're doing. And I'll tell you now, if you send me an email, I can send you a discount code to join us there. We've got some amazing CLOs to help. We're going to think together about what this means for how organizations can learn better. And the idea is to help you give everybody some ideas you can work with, and also find some ideas that we can continue to push forward over time. So that was so we've gone through 3 of the 4. I just want to highlight one more. And that's to change what you're paying attention to. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's an awful lot that of the way we worked at the office that we may or may not have been good at, but if we work at it, often it was very subconscious. Some people were good, others were not. And moving remote has made it even more clear that what we're doing subconsciously needs conscious effort. And it also makes it very clear that people who are missing these skills are missing them in a big way now, and we need to help them get there. And what do I mean by that? continuing on this theme that it's not really about the technology change, it's about organization change, that it's really as human as it is technical to get these. There's a really important element here. We've paid so much attention to technology skills and teaching people digital and teaching people AI, and even, should everybody learn to code? What we've dropped out of the conversation and we need to bring in is human skills. Human skills matter more than ever, and they've mattered before COVID. They matter even more now. You've all heard the statement, we hire for hard skills and fire for soft skills. Well, we need to pay more attention to the soft skills, what we call the human skills in there. And what we did is we went out and tried to find what these things were, and we found 41 different frameworks of them out there. Each of them had lists of things that looked important for these human skills. And so what we did is we organized those. We added a few that were not really there but needed to be there. We did a lot of expert work and card sorts and other things to get there, right? And then we put it into this meta framework. And so one of the things you want to think about in terms of human skills is, yes, we all know we need those soft skills, we need those human skills. This is a way to think about where they are and how we might develop them. Certainly in the background, an awful lot of basic literacy we need. Digital literacy, cultural literacy, organization, how organizations work, how the monies work. Everybody needs to know some of that, but then we want to think through these skills. And the way to think through it, the top is doing, the bottom is leading. The left is me, the right is others. And so one way to think about it is, how good am I, how good are my people at thinking well, at interacting with others? How good are we at managing ourselves? How good are we at leading others? No matter where you are in the organization, all four of these are important, but of course, some of them will get more important than others over time, right? The other thing is there are things we know: critical thinking, collaboration, and empathy. We forget it sometimes, but we know, right? Planning and organization, professionalism, project management, we know these. There's some, though, that are coming to the fore that we need to pay more attention to. Thinking systemically, having a comfort with ambiguity because of all the change that's happening, right? Persistence and integrity. So, and also, even from the start, how do we have a vision? How do we empower others from the bottom, not from the top? So we are building out some ideas on here. We're looking to work to collaborate with others to build these things up. So this is really the idea of these human skills matter. We've organized them here to help you. And if this helps you think through the human skills, and if you want to think more on it, then we can talk. Let's talk about that later. Okay, so in summary, we talked about 4 different things, right? We have changed the technology changes quickly. Pandemic, of course, changes it even faster, but organizations change much more slowly. We've done the technical side, but now we need to lead the people side, right? We need to help build up this resilience, the agility, the energy. So we listed 4 things, and I think we have time for just this next poll if we could. Can you put the poll up? And I won't be able to, I don't think I'll be able to see the results, but I'm going to try something else to see. Can you, is that poll up there?
George, the poll is up.
Okay, great. So if you can just answer it quickly, let's see where we are.
Okay. Of the 4 challenges, which needs the most work in your organization? Change the why or mission, 7%. Change your culture, 58%. Change the way you learn, that transforms CLO, 19%. Change the way you pay attention, change what you pay attention to, or human skills, 16%. So you have changed your culture as the overwhelming choice.
This is so tough, because if you're in the middle of an organization, it can be tough to think about changing the culture. Certainly you can talk about changing the culture in everything that's below you. And the critical piece was, don't try to be the digital people, but the steps that we laid out there, they work. And they're not, yes, they're hard, but they're not impossible. So start doing these things. By the way, if you're in the middle of the organization and you can't necessarily change the organization, you can still start some of these. Start making the case to do some experiments, or do some experiments yourself. Start collaborating in a different way than you did before. And you can start to make this, and together with some friends, you can start to make this change happen. So culture is a perennial challenge to change in organizations. It does not need to be. And it sounds like from this group here, this is the place where we want to pay attention to it the most. Great. By the way, what did they say was the best, Paul?
In terms of what needs the least, mission.
Yeah. Mission needs the least.
Yep.
Okay, great. So that's good. Most of you feel like your company is doing something that's compelling to your people, that gives your people energy, and that's really exciting. That's good. Okay. So let's just do the kind of put this all together so then we can go on to the questions. If we're going to come back stronger, if we're going to build the resilience, the agility to energize, that's leading the people side. It's not the technical thing. The tools are important, those infrastructure are important, but how it's going to power you forward is not the tools. What's going to power you forward is a set of energized people working in an agile and a resilient culture. So what do? We change the why with a sense of mission, change the culture with a digital ready culture, change what we learn with a transformer CLO, and pay more attention to human skills than we ever have before. So great. So why don't we jump in to do some questions, Paul?
Great. I want to give you a second to turn on your webcam. We have got quite a few questions that have come across. And just a reminder to our audience, you can continue to submit questions via the questions module. I will do my best. We're not going to get to all of them because I can see how many there are, but we'll see how many we can tackle. George, I want to begin by revisiting a couple of the slides that were early in your presentation. So you have a great line. We changed quickly, but did we change well? Does this question kind of risk diminishing the significance of changing quickly? I mean, there's some real value in just knowing you can do it, isn't there? And that was a revelation for a lot of companies who were forced to adapt, particularly to remote work overnight.
It was just insane how fast organizations changed. And it was really, really hard to do, especially if you're on the technology group. It was just a nightmare for these people. We had our people, MIT was pretty good at digital learning before we started. And yet our digital learning team, the team that really empowers our professors to do their part internally, was working night and day for weeks. I will say though, the fascinating thing is we took something like 1,200 courses online in 2 weeks. We had 20 calls to the help desk. So this team working night and day was able to do some amazing things. Now, the good thing is we had started off where most courses already had some pieces. Every school did it, every hospital did it, every company did it. That they really moved mountains to get there. But the challenge is in moving those mountains, we often are focused on moving the mountain, not necessarily getting where we want to go. So now's the time to think about that.
So on that note, when it comes to changing culture, how do we decide what to keep and what to jettison? How do you ensure that there's continuity between who we were or who we are and who we want to become? So we're not trapped by our past, but we're also not becoming kind of a cultural dilettante.
So number one is really if you can get that mission right and people can rally around that mission, we'll know what the right thing is to do. At Kaiser Permanente, for example, they're really about keeping their communities healthy. That doesn't mean keeping their hospitals filled. And so since people are rallying around this idea of keeping the communities healthy, now people can come up with other really interesting ideas, like can we just take a van out to that poor neighborhood, do some blood pressure screening? And that becomes legitimate. So one is link around the culture, link around the mission. And number two, constantly be checking in with people to figure out, is this working for you? How can we push it forward? And when people do push back, and they will push back, question in the right way. Is this real? Or is this just something that you're complaining about? Mm-hmm. So get the mission straight, start engaging everybody in it, and then check in. Make sure people feel like they're really coming along in the right way.
You talked about being digital enough. How do we know when we've crossed that threshold? And is that a good enough end game, or is that just stage one?
So that's the fascinating thing. Digital enough actually is a good enough end game, because you want to be fast and agile, but you want to also make sure you're taking care of your people and you're taking care of society. So the idea that keeping your focus on integrity, keeping your focus on stability for people doesn't hurt you, that's a powerful finding, and it's something that's really important. And in fact, the digital companies, they have to learn that over time, right? As their 20-something-year-old employees turn into 30-something, as they stop working 16 hours a day and start having families, they have to learn how to make it work for people other than people right out of college. So digital enough really is right. And digital enough sounds, it's enough. It doesn't sound like, but get there. That's a huge step. And if you can get that far, the self-organizing, experimentation, you're going to win.
Thank you. So let's get to some audience questions. Do you have advice for people in risk-averse organizations, such as government agencies, but probably not just government agencies, where most people want to go back to the way we did things before coronavirus?
So one piece of advice, you got the hard chargers in the organization, and they will be hard chargers. And many people just want to do their work and go home. And let's not forget about that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And sometimes we call those people wrong, and that's not the right way. What do you want to do? Energize people around a mission. And the good thing is, government agencies, many of them have a strong mission. Sometimes we forget about it in the bureaucracy. So help people understand where the mission is, help people feel respected with whatever they want to do, and engage people in making that change happen. We will never go back to the old way of working, because if we go back to the old way of working and our competitors are working in a more agile, more fast, you won't be around for long. Same thing with government. If we're in government and we're working the old way, when society expects us to be working in a more customer responsive, agile way, eventually that change should come to you too.
Any advice for people who maybe are in the middle of an organization, who see the world how you see it, but are dealing with leaders who do not?
Yes. Number one, don't wait to be asked. Start making these changes happen on your own. Stretch the rules, don't break the rules. Number two, help your bosses understand how other people are doing this effectively in contexts like yours. So, it's easiest to say, yeah, that sounds great for Google, it'll never work for us. But if you could say, hey, look, it just worked for this bank next door or this manufacturing next door, that's a whole different thing. So do your thing and constantly just message the people that need to be messaged. And you'll have two chances. Either you will make the change happen, and you may even be seen as the star who can make this change happen other places, or you'll find out change isn't going to happen, and you can go somewhere else.
Can you talk about the skills, background, experience that a transformer needs?
The same skills, background, experience that the existing L&D leaders have. What you want to do is have a more business focus, and you want to take on more responsibility and authority than you might have been asked to in the past. So it's signing up to take on some personal risk to help the company move forward. And in everything else, you have the skills to do it.
If you're a new CLO, what is the one data point you need to follow? What is that one kind of critical KPI or metric?
Wow. If you only had one, I would give a net promoter score for our learning and development function. Now, I would say go beyond a little bit, make sure you got the financials worked out, make sure you got some other things, but NPS is a pretty darn good score.
Can you actually explain NPS real quick for some people who might not be familiar?
So, if you've gotten these more and more, you get these one question polls from companies that say, how likely are you to recommend our service to other people? And the NPS is just taking the top numbers, the 7 through 10, 8 through 10, and drop off the bottom half. And so how many people are active supporters, dropping out the people that are not supporters? And you're pushing the dial into real supporters as opposed to average people. The scores, you can find how to calculate those scores online. It's a pretty darn good measure for a single question, and then you can go beyond that.
So this question comes from someone who is very familiar with your work. Considering that culture assumes such significance for digital transformation, would you say this aspect has been adequately, tough word, covered in the digital maturity model published in your study with Capgemini in 2012? Would you change anything in that model in light of the COVID pandemic?
We were the first, I can say this, we were the first really great book. Sorry, that feels bad. Anyway, we have a darn good book, and we were the first one out there.
Want me to say it?
Yeah,
this
please say it.
Your study in the book was a major pivot in our understanding of digital transformation. You really introduced a lot of the language and structure as we understand it today. So I've said it. Now you can go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But we were the first, and so as the book came out in 2014, we continued to learn, and we always knew that this was about two things. It was about doing the digital stuff well and getting it into your customer experience and your operations and your business models. It was about leading the change, envisioning and enlisting your people in making that change happen. The culture was always something that we knew would happen, but it wasn't happening yet when we started. So this culture has come along as we've gotten better at it. This culture work has come in. If anything, the stuff that I've worked on with you, Paul, and your team, and other work we've done, this people stuff has become more important over time. very technology focused. It's become much more about making sure that people are ready to go, and we're arming them with the right skills to change.
Yeah. Where does the buck stop in organizational learning? Who owns it?
Certainly, the CLOs need to sign up to own it more than they have in the past. But in the end, the learning is going to really come for the individual to learn for yourself, if you're powered the right way, and to empower those individuals to learn for themselves. It's going to become the supervisors to empower their people. So that was a long, complex answer. So CLO need to take more responsibility. The supervisors need to take more responsibility to help their teams move up. And last, individuals need to sign up with that growth mindset to make it happen. So the buck's stopping all over the place.
You gave me a sideways answer, but I'm going to let you get off. I'm going to let you off the hook. Where are organizations most likely to misstep in trying to implement the transformer CLO model? What should we be on the lookout for?
Don't spend too much money before you really make the changes happen. There are so many tools that are out there. There's so many consultants that will sell you a $1 zillion transformation package. But in the end, it's really thinking about the employee experience. It's thinking about what really the state of the art is here and how we can really make this thing work for employees and make the company ready to change. So the biggest place you can lose is by spending too much without putting the rest in. Yeah, go ahead.
Apologies for stepping on your last sentence there. As we think about kind of formal and informal learning, structured and unstructured, how should we think about coaching and mentoring being integrated into the L&D process?
It's really critical, and frankly, companies do it well for the top of the organization. They don't do it as well for the rest. We ask supervisors to mentor people. Many times companies are setting up formal mentorship programs which rarely work. And so what they say is go find a mentor, which is fine if you're the kind of person who doesn't really, who's already a hard charger, but the people that really need it aren't. So mentoring is very important. What we're seeing is really that we need to empower the supervisors to do this well, and we need to follow up with the supervisors to make sure they're doing it well. And second, we need to give people tools so they can arm themselves if they want it with some ideas on where they go, what question to ask, what to expect. So mentoring is being done very badly in most organizations. The people that need mentoring that are great find the mentors, and the people that need the mentoring most don't know how to find them, and then it's not working for them.
In terms of the poll results, the first poll regarding trainers versus transformers, this audience member says, I found that companies, at least most of the large industrial companies we deal with, view their transformation progress through the rosiest of colored glasses. Your comment?
Well, it depends who you're looking at, right? So you can often hear the top of the company feeling pretty rosy about it because they're hearing the transformer drivers giving all the good messages. And you often hear the people at the bottom of the company saying, oh my God, they're doing this to me again. So I don't necessarily see the rosiest pieces of it. I think sometimes if you're getting only the rosy picture, you need to ask a little bit deeper to find out what's really going on. Transformation is really hard. And if you're paying only attention to people at the top, you're missing what the employees are going through.
Here's another question about metrics. What metrics would you recommend for assessing whether you have achieved digital enough?
You'd want to look at your speed metrics. You'd want to look at your innovation metrics. What are we doing that's new, that's working? What are we doing that's new that we canceled because it wasn't working? How energized does the company feel? How energized the company feel to go out and make a great new mission happen? A lot of those are going to be perceptual measures from engagement kinds of things, and that's certainly we can look at initiatives created and failed, but you're going to have those kind of perceptual engagement things. Just because they're not quantified doesn't mean they're bad.
We've got a number of questions coming in about the applicability of some of these ideas to startups and to medium-sized businesses. So here's an example. How does all of this apply to a startup with 50 employees and no CLO? Can you still follow this way of thinking, this model?
So startups have a remarkable way of sharing information with each other. And you want to just make sure that as you grow, you continue to do that, right? So when you got 5 people in a garage, you can't help but share. As you get to 50 people, now some of that's happening, but people are busy and so they don't. So what can you do? You can put together informal times where maybe there's a lunch where you get together and you share some ideas or some challenges over time. Or maybe every once in a while you have somebody who's done something really cool and they can create a video, or they can just do something after work over beers to think about it. So in a smaller group, you can encourage this with just less formal process.
Before expecting to come back stronger post-COVID, there are many ifs and buts to address. This audience member notes, organizations have to put in a great deal of effort just to survive, and they also need external support. Can you list a few things an organization needs to do itself versus what they might be able to rely on external partners to accomplish?
Well, certainly, every government is thinking about how much money they should still invest in companies to keep them going. And certainly, if you are a movie theater or a restaurant or many of those places that are really, really struggling, it's hard right now. And so, government support, those kinds of things, other people smarter than me can share on that. One thing you might want to think about, though, in this world is to really think hard about what you should be doing and what you should be having other people do for you. And so it may be an opportunity to start saying, there's something here that I'd be much better outsourcing so I can concentrate on what I'm good at. There are certain things that I might do, one for me, but if my employees were to move to a different company, they would have a whole career path in this field where they might be stagnated where I am. So I would think a lot on the outsourcing, the partnering in ways that we didn't before, not only because it's a way of moving costs around, but because it allows you to focus on what you're good at and let your employees in those functions find a career for themselves they might not have for you.
We've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to get in two more questions. As we look forward to a period, and maybe a permanent period, where organizations become hybrid, right? Partially located together, partially dispersed. What challenges do you expect with respect to cultural change in that kind of environment, right? We knew how to work together. We've gotten used to working completely remote, and now we're going to be in a bizarre kind of hybrid model. What do you see as some of the most significant challenges to kind of keep the culture strong and keep people connected in that environment?
So the bizarre hybrid model was already happening in large firms around the world, and we were already struggling with some of those things. Now other people are in that world too. It's the human skills that, how are we going to coordinate? How are we going to make sure that people work together as people, not just as task doers? How can we find empathy for a person we've never met and we only ever see by video? How can we find teams get cohesive at working together when they're never in this place together? So we got to pay an awful lot of attention to human skills. The other thing that I think we want to pay attention to, and it's partly the human skills, but it's partly just the idea of serendipity. Paul, I don't know about you, but I've lost count of the number of things that occurred to me just by seeing somebody in the hall, stepping out of the bathroom or whatever. We have a quick conversation, suddenly this amazing idea came up. And we are so formal in our video conferencing right now that those moments of serendipity are not happening anymore. The idea of going off and having coffee with somebody doesn't happen anymore. So what I worry about, in addition to just the pure empathy, the pure getting along, is will we lose our innovativeness from those hallway conversations? And how can we get those back?
Final question. I'm gonna revisit some of the characteristics that you talked about in transforming the learning experience for everyone. Digitized, atomized, personalized, optimized, in the flow. George, this sounds really hard to do. Are we all up to the task?
I will tell you that most people want to be up to the task already. I had to change my old minivan, the door wasn't going up and down anymore. And I had to change those little brackets that hold it up. And I found a 5-minute video that taught me how to do this job. And it saved me about $200 of repair work. We all do that now. We're all happy to go out and find those things and make them work. Why aren't we making that available for people? So I think in many ways, it's not the people who aren't ready to change. It's the organization that hasn't stepped up to the challenge yet. And we can get there.
On those words, George Westerman, thank you so much. Folks, that is all the time we have for today's presentation. Over the next few days, please look for a survey via email. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. This concludes our program. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, George Westerman, and thanks to our sponsor, Skillsoft. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.